So to jump in, I'm going to talk about DevSecOps, which is a little different from a DevOps event. I'm Mark Davison. I work for a tiny little company. In fact, that's my little company. And what we do is kind of DevSecOps stuff and security consulting. And I've been working, and I did DevOps for sort of 10 years, but before we called it DevOps, we called it collaboration. And that culture thing that we just heard about, that's fantastic. That's exactly what we're trying to do. That's the good stuff of DevOps. And this is taking that step further. So here's a bit of talk objectives. I think they help set the tone. And this should, hopefully, by the end of it, I'll have covered all of these, and you'll have a nice kind of idea of an introduction to what DevSecOps is. So, sorry, my dibber's falling apart. So the really quick kind of recap on what DevOps is. In 2007, Patrick Dubois, who's our kind of pioneer in this space.
He's the person I pissed off.
Fantastic, you've pissed off Patrick. Wow. Well, he's, good luck to you. So he was him and his team, they were doing DevOps, they were involved in engaging. And then come 2009, they started the DevOps Days conference. And that's kind of where we started to kick off. And we started to grow that DevOps, and we started to see it a bit more. And then come 2013 with the Phoenix project release, which if you haven't read it, it's a great read. 5th anniversary edition came out this year with a few extras in it. Yeah. So that's where we kind of started to hit the zeitgeist for DevOps, and we started to all embrace it. So what is DevOps? Well, it's culture. It's all about culture. It's not really about tooling. We talk about it as infrastructure automation sometimes, but it is all about that culture, that collaboration, the sharing and supporting each other. So bearing that in mind, the really brief history of DevSecOps. So I found a Twitter hashtag to using it in 2012. And at that point, they were kind of using it as a joke, saying, oh, where's this DevOps going to go next? But in 2014, it started to get a bit more noise. And at AWS reInvent, AWS did a talk, DevSecOps, and they told us how they were operating that kind of mentality in their environment. And then in 2015, we had the first DevSecCon in London. And that is now, I think they're doing 5 conferences a year globally. And that's growing, so that's a really small kind of 2-day conference, a little different to some of the others. And then we come through 2016, 2017, 2018, we're starting to gain a bit more traction. So much so that come 2018, we have an OWASP project called DevSlop that's looking at how we do DevSecOps together. And the woman behind that, Tanya Yanka, is a chapter leader for Ottawa, the OWASP guys in Ottawa. And I think she works at Microsoft. But she's also doing a blog post series at the moment all about implementing DevSecOps from the technological perspective. Well, this talks more about the culture. That's the technology. You can find her, it's She Hacks Purple, if you want to find her. I've got some links at the end, so you can photograph those. So again, it's not really a surprise, is it? Given the way I'm speaking, that DevSecOps will look a lot like DevOps. It's again all that collaboration, the sharing, supporting each other. Only this time we've got a slight tweak where we're thinking more about security. We're kind of saying, well, we're doing good things with our infrastructure automation. We've kind of got that idea, all good. Now we need to do it with security as well. We need to help them to automate their tools, them to think about their processes and bring it forward. So the traditional security world against the DevSecOps world. So in traditional security, it was a hard no, yeah? They went, you came along, you built your project, you built all of your product up, you'd done all the work to roll it out across the servers, and then you gave it to security right at the end, 3 years work, and they go, no, you can't put that out, that's insecure. And then along comes a manager who goes, well, we've paid for all the advertising. We've got to put this out. It's too late. Sign that off. Yeah, it's fine. Now we've got a product in production, live, facing the world, that's got known vulnerabilities in it. Well, that's not so good. So in the DevSecOps space, we can change that by having the conversations earlier, by involving everybody. And then we can say, well, what if we did this? And how about, and we can make changes before we write the code, just like we're thinking in DevOps, we can make a change sooner. That brings us business benefits, that brings us lower cost of ownership, all those kind of good things that managers like. So I've lost my timing because it's been running a while, but let's kind of illustrate the point. So a week ago, I was sat on client site talking to one of the security team, and they had this massive spreadsheet, seriously huge spreadsheet. And the idea of this spreadsheet was to capture the risk analysis for each product. And they were going to go with this spreadsheet to each team and get them to sit down for, they estimated, 2 days and work out what the risk was. But as we were going through it, I realized that operations already had probably about 3/4 of that information to hand and in their systems. And they were capturing that at near real-time speed. But because security had no idea about it, and they used a slightly different language, they didn't know to ask. So I suggested that we take this different approach. So we'll see how that goes, but we're going to try and script something up. We're going to make a few API calls, and we'll pull together a nice report for them that's going to solve most of that sort of equation, those questions. And then that little bit that's left, they can go to the teams for, and then the teams only have to spend at most half a day. So there's all these sort of efficiencies we can get from this. So given that, what makes for good DevSecOps? So it's all about the team, it's all about bonding people, and it's about doing to use the real buzzword, shifting left. Ideally, we want some specialists. So to take it kind of a little bit further again, we've got our developer, we've got our operations, and we've got our security, and potentially our DBA as well. Let's not forget them. We're not leaving them out. We do include them. And let's say we're going to build a web app, and we need TLS. So we want a security person who's got TLS knowledge, and we want a developer who's got TLS knowledge, and we want an operations person who's got TLS knowledge. That might sound like we're duplicating our skill sets here, but we're not, because these three people have got different perspectives and different views on that knowledge. So our developer will hopefully know how to code the best possible way and use the libraries and frameworks in their, whatever code, their language they're using. And then our operations person will know how to get the certificate in the first place and then renew that certificate automatically and ensure that keeps happening so that we don't have the O2 outage with Ericsson last week happening to our product, right? And the security person should know their ciphers and their protocols and know which the best ones are to use and be able to pick you an optimization, and then they can all collaborate together, which is our fourth item there, to optimize that solution and bring the best security they can in the quickest way they can. One thing to think about is that security are this outgroup in this whole equation. They do kind of sit outside at the moment, and we need to bring them in. They sit outside because they don't number very many. So the stat is 100, 10, 1. That's 100 developers, 10 operations, 1 security person. So you've now got 110 DevOps over here and 1 security person who's very, very scared. You wonder why they sit in their ivory tower? They don't know how to talk to 110 people. It's a lot. So what we have to do when we're over in DevOps land is start to engage them and bring them across as well. And that's how we kind of build the culture of the DevSecOps. And we show them all the good things that we did in DevOps, and we talk to them about how we could do these good things with them as well. So an allegorical tale, which is going to be kind of about tooling in a way. So we've got a server, and the DevOps team have spun up this server. And on it is, unfortunately, root and a very weak password with SSH access enabled. But they say it's fine, this is just a CI/CD server. It's never going to be put on the internet. Nothing's ever going to breach this. And then one day they notice some odd traffic and they can't log into the server anymore. What's happened? Well, it turns out that there was a firewall manufacturer change. They were using one set of firewalls, using another. They had to migrate the rules. And that process, there was a mistake. And they opened this server up to the world. And a bot got in and has just taken over their server. So we call security at that point and we're saying it's all gone horribly wrong. Don't know what's happening. Can you analyze it? It's all good. But that's the first time we've spoken to security in this scenario. So security come in, ends up all being a very nice breach. It was a little malicious bot. It didn't do anything horrible. All good. So it's all locked down and cleared out. So we've now got our situation of having to rebuild the system. But we've got all the right people in the room now. So we can now rebuild this system in the right way. So we make sure that we don't allow root to have a weak password. In fact, security say at this point, we've got a policy in place for this. And what you should do is make sure that SSH only ever uses keys and that root is not accessible from SSH. That's good hygiene, right? We all know that. We're all doing that, I'm sure. So that's one part, and that's security playing their part there. Well, operations are saying, well, that box, actually we hand cranked that box. It was a one-off. We didn't think we were going to need to do it again. But we've got this infrastructure automation tooling. We're not daft, right? We've already got that compliant SSH policy in place. We've got a module for it. So what we'll do, we'll take the time, we'll invest that bit of effort, and we'll build our CI/CD module. So we add that in, and the developers come along and they look at their CI/CD with the help of security, and they say, well, were we doing things in the right way? And the little problem here is that they had one big account that was admin and had loads of control and access. So instead they start breaking that down and they say, we're going to have a little account, and all it can do, we need to get code. So all that thing can do now, it's going to go off and get code. It can read the code. It can no longer write to the code. It can't administer the code. It just reads it. And it can only read one repository because that's all it needs. So we break down all of these different things. This is all that good security stuff that can kind of come in later. Well, it should come in at the start, right? But we're bringing in later in this example. So we've now cleaned everything up. We've got our systems back. Oh, and by the way, we locked off the firewall, right? And everything looks a lot nicer. But as that example, that bringing people together, that thing from an incident response, is kind of similar to what we want to achieve when we DevSecOps, when we're in that position at the start of a project. So the final bit, I stole this slide from AWS's talk on DevSecOps. So the final bit is, why do we need the term? And it's really simple. It's to avoid those things that we saw there in that example, right, where we forgot. So it's that we remember security. It's quite hard to forget DBAs in a way, so they don't seem to get their own little circle. But security can get forgotten or missed just because we think that we're safe somewhere else. Thank you very much for your time. There's some references. Any questions?
No questions at all?
Cool.
So you're working in this?
You're working in this, yes.
What sort of tooling helps you?
So I'm as a contractor essentially. So I turn up on various client sites. So it depends on the client as to the tools that they ought to use. So what I aim to do personally is make the most of the tools they already have. So we try not to introduce too much. We try and make sure that that they're going to be comfortable with what we can deliver, and make sure we deliver it with them, not just for them, right? So let's say they're an AWS shop and they love Lambda. Well, then we'd work in the Lambda space, and we'd couple up some Lambdas to provide more monitoring, and we turn on the CloudWatch logs, make sure the metrics are firing through and get through to the right system. So we try and use what's already there. I think we try not to introduce tooling because that makes things more complicated. It's kind of that idea, going back to the culture. This is a cultural shift rather than a tooling shift. So it's really about just changing how you think and making sure you go and talk to people. So let's say security is sat over there, right? And they're very scared of DevOps because they don't know who to talk to. Well, then it's incumbent on DevOps to go and talk to security and have the conversations and see how they maybe can help them. So one thing I did at one client, so they ran SRE, so the Google SRE thing. So they ran SRE, and we put an SRE team with security to provide security some tooling, so to just work for them exclusively. So it's just a couple of people helping security to be more sort of automatic and more streamlined. Yeah.
When you
obviously different client sites. Is there like a single sort of theme or common error that you see DevOps people make?
Well, they're all different. That's the problem. Yeah, well, the common error is they forget the security part. They forget to, not that they forget to try and be secure, but that they overlook something somewhere in that process. Pipelines are a key, actually pipelines are the key place where people forget to be secure. They think it's internal and it's safe and it's secret and no one can get it. Well, Jenkins has got all your passwords in plain text. Guess what, as an attacker, I'm going for? I'm going for your CI/CD pipeline. They're not particularly well written from a security perspective. In fact, with Jenkins, it's quite serious because if you leave it as it is, you've basically got admin over the whole box and full access. You can do anything you like. So there are plenty of Jenkins servers sat on the internet. If you look at Shodan, you'll see a load of Jenkins servers on the internet with no passwords, no credentials. They're available for you to do whatever you want to them. It's like a playground for an attacker.
There's a huge amount of trust now with the rise of Docker, Kubernetes, all these sort of things where people just blindly trust everything. Like the NPM vulnerability recently where it was just looking for Bitcoin addresses.
Yeah.
It seems to be huge. I think most front-end apps now download 300-400 mega dependencies just to build it.
Yep.
And no one really looks at what's in those.
Yeah, so dependency management's key. Understanding, I mean, it's a huge topic because we've got all these teams working at speed, right, and delivering packages constantly. Understanding what you're installing and what that's really doing. And when you pick a library, like you're writing code, you pick a library, it finally works. Right? You spent 3 weeks on this thing, it finally works. You don't want to touch it again. But there may be something in there that you're not expecting, or if you're not pinning versions. So one of the things we do, I was talking to someone earlier and they was talking about, before the talks, they were talking about pinning a version. So that when you do patch management, you should pin all your versions in your infrastructure automation tooling. That's a great idea. That's a really good thing to do. It does raise your, you have to put more work in to keep everything patched because there are going to be security vulnerabilities coming in. You need to assess those, make a judgment call and apply them where required, right? But, that having an absolute knowledge of what patch level you're at, brilliant. Can really help.
This is the most impactful way to make sure people are aware of security.
Most impactful way, have a breach. Seriously, have a breach. Suddenly everyone takes notice. They really do. Security can have a hard time. They are that out group. They do struggle to be part of it and join everyone else. As much as they seem like mean people who keep saying no to me, they don't mean to be. They came in at the end and they didn't really understand what was going on, right? It's a tricky one. The idea is, with the culture, that you go and talk to each other. So invite them, if you're having a new project kickoff or a product kickoff, get them in the room, invite them. I mean, they might be a bit, we don't want to at first. It can take a little bit, but hopefully you'll find someone who can champion this for you, who's gonna, within security, who's gonna say, actually guys, this is really good. Let's go and do this. And let's put more effort in and try and talk to our dev teams and our operations teams a bit more.
Anyone else?
Do you think a lot of this is because it's not enabling these things? Because I think this is a common thing, isn't it? It's like, go and talk to them. I know that you've got to do it on the ground, but it's almost like, managers saying, talk to them. That's what team as well. It's like, or enable the communication to happen.
You're right, I've seen great team managers and not so great team managers. And the really great ones are the ones who go out and engage with other teams and try and get them coming to your team and they try and get your team going to their team and try and get that mix going on. So we can get some mixing going, then things get a lot easier.
Just go and sit in that room.
Literally, that's one way of doing it, is like go and sit with those people. Stop sitting here with your friends. Actually go and sit with those people and have a conversation and see what's going on. I mean, it's easy for me I'm parachuted in, right, as a contractor, turn up and go, hi, what's going on? And I wander around and have to talk to people because that's what they're paying me to do. It's a bit harder when you're sat there day in, day out with a company and you need, you're given a project or something and you want to focus on it, you want to write your code or you want to build your servers, whatever it happens to be that your job role is, you're kind of focused on that and you can forget all these other people. So this is where that kind of agile thing of having those meetings, those retrospectives and the sprint plans and all that kind of thing can really come in useful because you can get security involved. So again, another client, security team, invited them to all the sprint planning retrospectives. I actually did that as one-hour meeting. Once every 2 weeks, we did that one. And we invited them to every single, they didn't come every time, but they turned up every so often and they engaged. And so everyone knew, and it was always the same person from security who came. So everyone knew who that was. And that meant when they saw them at the coffee, bar or whatever down the road, or, at the kettle, they could then have a conversation and talk about the weather or whatever else it happens to be. But you're making those connections and that building that culture. And then you invite them down the pub or invite them to lunch. But one thing that is worth mentioning is this can be a ground up thing. So you don't have to rely on those senior managers to do things for you. Certainly, it's the team leads and that middle management layer that are going to make that difference rather than senior management. And you can do this without any buy-in from senior management because you're just talking to people. It's free.
Based on the fact that 80% of hackers are supposedly from the inside, do you suspect anyone you work with?
So based on the fact that 80% of hackers are from the inside, interesting stat, totally wrong. Do you know that? It's actually completely wrong. It's much smaller. I don't actually have it to hand. I was at the DevSecCon earlier and there was a keynote speech about it. Yeah, ping it over. I'll dig the speech out. But if you look at the DevSecCon talks, they're all up online from London this year. One of them, I think it's the keynote, not the very last one, but I think the evening keynote from the first night. That's where they dispelled the myth that it's all inside. Actually, a lot of it is outside. But a lot of it is really low-level stuff. It is that kind of someone stuck a server on the internet with a password of password and a user of root, and someone got in, or they had admin on Windows, or yeah, exactly, yeah.
So like, it's much easier to be insecure. Like your job's much easier if you're insecure. Generally.
Is my job easier if I'm insecure, or their jobs are easier if they're insecure?
If you're deploying stuff, it's easier to be insecure. So like a lot of the controls I'm seeing at the moment give you no option, like setting TLS by default, setting password complexity at an agent level where you can't.
That's one of the key things, yeah. So yeah, if you're insecure, is kind of easier, right? You don't have to worry about certificates and keys and passphrases, that kind of stuff. That's true, yeah. Being insecure is easier. That's why it's that low barrier to entry, and that's why everybody goes, it works, right, okay, leave it alone. Things like Kubernetes. Kubernetes is so complex. I don't understand Kubernetes. That's a really complex topic. You need some specialists in there for that. To secure it properly, there's some really good guidelines out there. There's another one I know of that's coming out soon, if it's not already out, on how you secure Kubernetes and these best practices, because Kubernetes by default is insecure. Google have done fantastic work to make Kubernetes secure. But yeah, by default, most manufacturers of any product will make it insecure because it gives you a quicker way in. As you as a consumer, I can get into that, right, great, okay. And then you have to lock it down. So they'll have all the ports will be open by default, that sort of thing, and we've got to lock them all down. It's turn off services you don't need. These hygiene things that we talk about in the security space. They just leave everything on, right? There's 16 things running and you only need one of them. Well, let's turn all the others off. But we don't know what will happen if we turn all the others off. So it's easier to be less secure in that position.
If we get any more questions, grab Mark afterwards.
Yeah, grab me in the pub. Thank you.